my team ain't taking no L's. I told him you don't wanna play us. We going out town with a flight in the morning. Said fuck it, I'm just gonna stay up, yeah. Oh, I seen it all, you avert.
Yo, what's good everybody? Welcome to another weekly chart breakdown here. As always, we'll start off first on gold on the higher time frame, such as the weekly. Now when we're looking at the weekly time frame on gold, we are clearly still bullish. We closed in the last weekly candle in a form of a bullish engulfing candle, closing above previous highs here. So this upcoming week, we might get another bullish continuation. When you go down into the daily time frame, we also see a bullish market structure here, where for short term, we had some bearish momentum. Then we created a new higher high, came down for a higher low, and currently closed like that. So when we look at the daily candle, we see that the daily candle closed in the form of a rejection candle, but also a form of an indecisive doji candle, right? So when we see that, ultimately you got to come down into the lower time frame, such as the 4 hour, and see what we have. Now when we're looking at the 4 hour time frame, we see that the market structure overall is still bullish, right? We have higher high, higher low, higher high, and now here we created an equal low, right, where price is currently rejecting from. So based off this equal low, we might create a new higher high, or we might create a higher low at this range and then continue lower. Overall, we don't know that. But when we're looking at gold, we need to keep in mind that the weekly is bullish, the daily is bullish, and the 4 hour is also still bullish. It will continue bullish until we see a lower high being created, a new lower low being created. With that, we would have the 3-leg extension, which ultimately will be leg 1, the pullback leg, and then the extension leg. As long as we don't get that, the market structure is still considered bullish. So when we're looking at that, right, coming a little lower, let's say to the 1 hour time frame, what could we expect in this up following week? So basically, as long as we maintain above the 2430s, we might still get another bounce to the upside and get a form of a double bottom for buys here, right? If we see a steeper pullback, we also might get a bounce off this daily level at the 2421 range, see a bounce back up into this range, or maybe all the way up into this range as well. Now the other opportunity for buys will be a break and retest above this range, back up into these highs. And if we're looking to take sells, you could take medium probability sells based off this rejection or resistance over here. So let me delete this here. And basically just wait for price to reach this range, right? And then reject, so you could take sells back down into 2430, which ultimately will look like this. Now you do need to keep in mind that this will be medium probability sells. Now the higher probability sells will be once we start breaking structure back under this range here on the daily time frame. Here's where you could, have higher probability sell setups all the way back down into this range, or maybe even somewhere lower. And once we reach this major resistance up here on the daily 2472 range, we could also see bearish impulse to the downside, or a break and retest to the upside, and then create new higher highs on gold. But overall on gold, I'm still very much bullish, just because gold has been bullish for a long time, and there's no reason why gold should, transition back into the bearish trend for now. So that's my take on gold. Now let's check out NAS100 here. We'll start off on the weekly time frame as well. Now when we're looking at the weekly, we are still bullish, but we're currently still in that pullback phase. So we don't know when that pullback phase will end, right? We have higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. And now here in this range, we got a form of an equal low if we hold the support range, where based off this, we might get another big bullish impulse to the upside. Obviously, this is like way too far in the future. So for that, let's go a little lower on the time frames and see what we can see here. So ultimately, when we're looking at this, we see that price is currently at this major support range at the 18409. So as long as price maintains and bounces along this range, you could definitely take advantage of buys back up into the 1874 range, or maybe all the way up into the 18915 range. Now, as long as we maintain below that range though, like if we come up into this range and we reject, you could definitely also take sells back down. Or if we should come back up into this range, you could also take sells back down if we start to reject, or when you see that price is rejecting that range. Why is that? Because on the daily, we are in a bearish market structure, and on the 4 hour, we are also very much bearish. So this means that right now, the probabilities will still be with the sells as long as we have 2 time frames on the higher time frame that are bearish. which is this case right here. We got the 4-hour bearish, daily bearish, and only the weekly bullish, but we don't know when the weekly trend will continue or if it will continue. So you got to focus a little on the lower time frames, such as the daily and the 4-hour, and these are clearly telling you that we are bearish. We just created a new lower low right here. So what you could wait for now is basically for price to pull back into this range, create a lower high range, and then take your sales based off this range back down into here. Or if price starts breaking, you could do a break and retest all the way back to the downside. So let me draw this out actually with the arrow here. So first setup will be a pullback back into this range. If we can reject, you could take sales to the downside here, because that will be according to the overall microstructure, which is bearish. If we see price break a little higher, come back into this range, you could definitely also still reject this range. And if you want to take buys or safer buys, you could wait for a break and retest above the daily support range, see if it can hold and bounce around here. So you could take buys back up into this 1916 range, or even higher, let's say above this range as well, a break and retest above the 4-hour, back up into this range. And now you guys know the drill. Based off this here, we could see a bearish impulse back to the downside, because this is a major resistance area. As you guys can see here, this resistance range started this whole bearish move to the downside. So this means that this is a strong supply area, from where if price were to reach this zone again or once more, we could definitely see at least a minor impulse to the downside, maybe even a bigger one. We don't know that, right? So that's that. And then at the range where we're currently at, if price should not reject this range and push back up, but instead immediately break back under, right? Guess what? We can wait for that break and retest to the downside here. So just wait for a steeper push to the downside, or for that pullback back into the daily resistance, and then take sales all the way back down into your next zone of interest, which ultimately, if we're looking at the higher time frames, will be somewhere around here, the 1785 or 88, or this 1800 flat psychological level, right? So yeah, my take on NAS, like I mentioned guys, it's currently bearish on the 4-hour and daily, so I would mainly be looking for sales on NAS. On gold, I will mainly be looking to take buys, just because gold is overall bullish as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.